So another effect that people like to apply to their images is the sepia tone effect. And that's a common question I get is, how do you do that? And Camera Raw makes that really, really simple to do. Here I've got a color image that I've already converted to grayscale. I'm in the HSL grayscale panel. It's the fourth one over from the left, and that checkbox has already been turned on, and I've already got some custom conversions here. If I turn that checkbox off, you can see there's the color version underneath. I'll turn that checkbox back on and get that grayscale version. What we want to do now is add color back to the image, but only in either shadow areas or the highlight areas. Or you can do a combination of both depending on what your end goal is. So to do that, we're going to switch over to the fifth tab, the fifth panel, and that's called the split toning panel. Once here, we can see that we've got separate sliders for the highlights in the image and the shadows of the image. What I really like about Camera Raw is that it's smart and knows that sepia tones and platinum tones and these old style effects that you used to achieve through different processing techniques when you're using film-based imaging, was that the sepia tone would not put the tones in the highlights. They'd have clean, pure highlights. And when you see typical consumer software, just a one-click button for sepia tones, they tend to dirty the whites as well. So I like that you actually have separate control in Camera Raw. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to choose the shadow slider, and we're going to start increasing the saturation of the shadows only. And you can see the highlights are not getting colorized. They're staying clean and pure and white. Once I increase the saturation, I typically don't go much beyond 25, and even most of the time keep it at about 20. Once I set the saturation I want, I can then use the hue slider and dial in the particular effect I'm looking for. So if I want a nice sepia tone, I've found that hue 50 is kind of the classic old look there. But of course, you're not limited to this. You can do a green tone, a purple tone, a blue tone, a platinum tone. It's really up to you. But if you're chasing that sepia tone, 50 is a good starting point there. Now, split toning means you can actually apply color to both the shadows and the highlights, and that's why you're given separate controls here. So in the interest of showing you everything here, if I want to create a split tone, I can increase the saturation of the highlights as well, and then you can get some pretty interesting effects by actually choosing a different hue for the highlights and a different hue for the shadows, and create some really interesting color effects. So completely up to you how you want to use these sliders. If you're just wanting to accomplish the classic sepia tone, then leave the saturation of the highlights alone and target the 50 hue as a good starting point. Play around with the saturation level, and it's just a couple sliders away and you've got a decent looking sepia tone effect.